Looking directly into the blinding afternoon sun is painful, but watching privileged teenagers pose in front of a private school courtyard is infinitely worse. I sat on the stone bench near the edge of the estate garden, holding my nursing textbooks tightly against my chest, wishing I could invisible myself into the hedge. I had only stopped by the East Wing garden to deliver my mother's hand-mixed rose fertilizer before heading to class, but the cheer team had decided to claim the lawn for an impromptu photo shoot. Suddenly, a sneeze caught me off guard. It echoed sharply against the marble columns of the conservatory. Every single head snapped in my direction. A tall guy on the varsity track team blinked, lowering his phone. "Dude, look at her! Even the way she sneezes is ridiculously effortless. I think we just found our muse for the homecoming banner." Before I could even gather my books, Candace Branson stepped forward, her face contorting into absolute disgust. Candace was the undisputed sovereign of luxury arrogance and the biggest brat in the hemisphere. "Excuse me? Are you people blind? She's not even on the squad. Look at her messy hair and those dirt-cheap clothes. She's literally our maid's daughter." Beside Candace stood Tori, the cheer captain. Unlike Candace, whose cruelty was loud and clumsy, Tori possessed a cool, evaluating gaze. Tori didn't scream or throw fits, she simply observed. Her sharp eyes swept over my frayed canvas shoes, my pristine posture, and the heavy medical manual in my lap. "The point is, she's still effortlessly prettier than you, Candace," Tori murmured softly, her tone laced with just enough quiet challenge to send Candace over the edge. Candace turned red, her eyes burning with sheer venom. She marched toward me and grabbed the collar of my worn cotton shirt. "Always remember your place in this house, Stellar. You're just our stupid maid's daughter. Always have been, always will be." I didn't flinch. I reached up, clamped my fingers around her wrist, and twisted it away with calm, practiced leverage. "At least my face isn't built out of envy and expensive fillers, Candace. Always remember that." I flipped my hair, spun on my heel, and walked away before she could scream. I knew I'd pay for saying it, but every word felt like air after drowning. My name is Stellar, and all I ever wanted was a peaceful, quiet life with my mother. But peace is a luxury item when you live in the servant cottage attached to the Branson family mansion. My mother had worked for Mrs. Branson since I was a little girl. In exchange for my mother's tireless labor, Mrs. Branson provided us with a small two-bedroom cottage near the edge of the property and paid my tuition at the elite Crest Academy. To an outsider, Mrs. Branson sounded like a saintly philanthropist. In reality, she was a ruthless social climber who maintained my mother's employment simply because no other housekeeper in the county would endure her verbal abuse. Mrs. Branson had twins my age, Candace and Julian. Thankfully, Julian had been shipped off to a prestigious Swiss boarding school 7 years ago, leaving only Candace to terrorize the estate corridors. The very next evening, the consequences of my garden comment came back to bite me. Candace dumped 3 binders full of her advanced history assignments onto my desk, demanding I complete them by morning. I was sitting at our small kitchen table working through her essays when I heard raised, furious voices echoing from the main courtyard outside. I stepped out onto the porch into the crisp autumn air. Mrs. Branson was standing under the chandelier lights of the terrace, surrounded by a dozen high society dinner guests. She was screaming directly into my mother's face. "How dare you serve my guests with standard silver-plated utensils? Where are the gold leaf sets from the vault? Did you take them? Did you slide them into your apron?" My mother bowed her head, her shoulders trembling as she apologized again and again. "Mrs. Branson, I followed the table ledger provided by your secretary. Don't talk back to me." Mrs. Branson barked, her voice sharp enough to cut glass. "You people see luxury every day and think you're entitled to touch it. Look at me when I'm speaking to you." I took a fast step toward the terrace, my knuckles white, my heart hammering against my ribs. I wanted nothing more than to march up those marble steps and put an end to her vile tirade. But across the patio, my mother caught my eye. She gave me a tiny, desperate shake of her head, silently pleading with me to stay back. I forced myself to freeze, swallowing the bitter iron taste of helpless rage. The next afternoon, I didn't resort to petty childish revenge. I knew better than to act like a fool and risk an innocent person's job. Instead, I used my brains. During the grand afternoon luncheon for Mrs. Branson's elite club, I noticed Mrs. Branson trying to impress an international diplomat with her supposed mastery of old-world European dining etiquette. She was loudly lecturing her guests on classical table settings while pointing out her lavish spread. Knowing Mrs. Branson's utter ignorance of actual formal protocol, I stepped in politely under the guise of assisting the butler. With quiet precision, I rearranged the diplomatic place settings according to strict, authentic diplomatic standards, placing her gaudy, incorrect ceremonial pieces in positions reserved for historical blunders. When the diplomat's private cultural attaché arrived, he gently pointed out Mrs. Branson's absurd errors to the entire table, praising the humble young server who had correctly arranged the seating. Mrs. Branson turned bright crimson, completely humiliated by her own pompous ignorance in front of the very people she sought to impress. She couldn't fire anyone, because every correction I made was flawlessly accurate. When I got back to the cottage, my mother was waiting for me. She sat me down, her face drawn with exhaustion. "Stellar, I know what you did at the luncheon. She deserved it, Mom. She treats you like dirt. We have to endure it, Stellar. Just a few more months until you graduate high school and get into university. Please, for me, promise me you'll keep your head down," I sighed, looking into her tired, gentle eyes. "Fine, I promise." Fate, however, had other plans. 3 days later, while carrying heavy winter drapes down the mansion's polished grand staircase, my mother slipped on a freshly waxed marble step. She tumbled down the last 8 stairs, snapping her ankle in 2 places. The doctor put her leg in a heavy cast and ordered strict bed rest for 3 months. To keep our cottage and preserve our income, I had no choice. I put on the dark maid's apron and stepped into her shoes. Candace was overjoyed. Having me at her beck and call became her primary hobby. She made me paint intricate hearts on her nails and carry her heavy gym bags across campus. But the real shift occurred a week later, when Mrs. Branson casually announced that her son, Julian, was returning home permanently to complete his senior year. After spending 4 straight hours scrubbing the hardwood floors of the East Wing guest quarters, I collapsed onto the velvet couch in Julian's private suite, completely drained. I meant to rest my eyes for 5 minutes. When I woke up, the sun was dipping below the horizon, casting a warm amber glow across the room. A tall guy was leaning against the edge of the dark wood desk, arms crossed over his chest, staring directly down at me with striking, intense green eyes. For a second, I thought I was hallucinating. He looked like he had walked straight off a fashion runway, sharp jawline, dark wavy hair, and eyes that held an uncanny, intelligent light. "Hello, Buttface," he said, a slow, crooked smirk spreading across his lips. "Did you miss me?" My mind stuttered. Buttface was the childish nickname Julian used to call me before he was sent away to Switzerland when we were 10 years old. I sat up instantly, adjusting my apron. "You're back, sorry. I was exhausted and fell asleep." He took a step closer, his eyes dancing with amusement. "You seemed like you were having a very intense dream. Was it about me?" "I dreamed I was punching your liver," I replied flatly, smoothing down my uniform. Still feisty as ever, Julian's smirk widened. "Why are you wearing the estate uniform? Where's your mom?" "She had an accident. Broke her ankle. I'm filling in temporarily until she heals. Now if you'll excuse me, I have work to do." I tried to walk past him, but he stepped smoothly into my path, his eyes following my every move. Later that evening, as I served dinner in the main dining hall, I could feel his gaze on me the entire time. When I reached across the table to set down his glass, his fingers intentionally brushed against mine. A sudden spike of heat shot up my arm, making my heart hammer against my rib. What was wrong with this guy? And why had he returned from Europe looking like a totally different person? A few days later at school, the dynamics grew even more chaotic. During a high-stakes calculus exam, the room went dead silent except for the frantic scratching of pens. Suddenly, several girls in the front row began whispering and giggling. I glanced toward the classroom door. Julian was leaning against the doorframe, wearing a crisp denim jacket, a sly smile playing on his lips. He caught my eye, raised his hand, and blew me an overt, deliberate kiss across the silent room. My stomach did a violent, dizzying flip. Beside me, Candace jabbed her elbow hard into my ribs. "Stop staring, peasant. My brother is just goofing off. Don't go dreaming you're his type. Trust me," I retorted under my breath. "He's not my type either." And I meant it. Getting involved with Julian Branson was a fast track to disaster. But Julian didn't make avoiding him easy. One afternoon, while I was vacuuming the main living room, he was working out on a leather mat near the floor-to-ceiling windows. He suddenly sat up, wiping sweat from his forehead with a gray towel. "Hey, Stellar. Do you think my shoulders look broad enough? Or should I add another set of reps?" To be brutally honest, his physique was absolute perfection. But there was no chance I was ever going to admit that to his face. "I think you should get a life, sir," I said smoothly, pushing the vacuum cleaner forward. Julian just laughed, a warm, resonant sound. He laid back down on his back and patted the floor near his feet. "Hold my boots down while I do crunches." I hesitated, then stepped forward, placing my hands firmly over his ankles to anchor him. As he began his sit-ups, his face rose within inches of mine with every single repetition. Every time he came up, I caught the subtle scent of cedar and rain on his skin. My breath hitched in my throat. On his 10th rep, he stopped right at the top, his green eyes locked onto mine, his lips mere centimeters from my own. "Excuse me," I whispered, trying desperately to keep my voice steady. "Are you flirting with me? Am I that obvious?" he murmured, his gaze dropping briefly to my lips before rising back to my eyes. "If you think you can add me to your private collection of high school admirers, you're deeply mistaken," I said, leaning back slightly. Julian chuckled, reaching out with his thumb to gently pinch my cheek. "You're adorable when you get defensive. Where did those chubby cheeks go from when we were kids? Should I stop calling you buttface and start calling you sweetface? That is profoundly cringy," I snapped, though a betraying heat flushed across my neck. "I have a mountain of laundry to do. Move." I stood up quickly and hurried out of the room before he could say another word, but avoiding him on campus proved equally impossible. The next morning near the outdoor bleachers, Tori intercepted me. She was leaning against the aluminum railing, holding her cheer clipboard, watching the track team practice. "Stellar," she said, her tone cool and measured. I stopped, adjusting my heavy backpack strap. "What do you want, Tori?" "I saw Julian Branson practically throwing himself at you near the library yesterday," she said, turning her head to evaluate my reaction. "People are starting to talk. Candace is already spreading rumors that you're using your mother's position to trap him." "Let them talk," I said coldly. "I don't care about Julian Branson, and I certainly don't care about Candace's petty rumors." Tori searched my face for a long moment, then released a slow breath. "Candace is vicious, Stellar. She doesn't like losing, especially not to someone she considers beneath her. If you're playing a game with her brother, make sure you know the rules. Because if you drop the ball, Candace won't just ruin your reputations, she'll make sure your mom loses her pension." I stared at Tori, surprised by the genuine, quiet warning in her voice. "Why are you telling me this?" "Because I hate bullies who lacks skill," Tori said simply, turning back toward the track. "And Candace is as sloppy as she is cruel. Just watch your back." Tori's warning stayed with me, but keeping my heart guarded became increasingly difficult as the weeks passed. On New Year's Eve, Mrs. Branson hosted a massive, glamorous masquerade gala at the estate to celebrate the upcoming end of the winter season. The mansion was ablaze with crystal lights, ice sculptures, and silver decorations. I spent the entire evening in my black service dress, carrying silver trays of appetizers through the sea of masked guests. Throughout the night, I felt Julian's eyes on me from across the ballroom. He was wearing a tailored black tuxedo, looking effortlessly regal, yet he ignored the wealthy heiresses surrounding him, his gaze tracking my every movement through the crowd. Around midnight, as I was washing glasses in the secondary kitchen pantry, a hand softly closed around my wrist. I spun around, nearly dropping a crystal flute. Julian was standing right behind me, his silver mask pushed up into his dark hair. "Get out of here with me," he whispered, his eyes gleaming with excitement. "Are you insane?" I hissed, looking over my shoulder toward the busy hallway. "If your mother sees me slacking off, she'll fire my mom on the spot." "So you're scared?" he teased gently, a challenging grin spreading across his face. "Where's that fearless little girl who used to kick my shin behind the stables?" I bit my lip, struggling against the sudden overwhelming urge to say yes. 5 minutes later, we were sneaking down the rear gravel driveway, crouching behind the hedges until we reached his dark matte black sports car parked near the old gatehouse. He unlocked the doors and we slipped inside. The engine roared to life with a deep, throaty rumble as we accelerated out onto the coastal highway. "Where are we going?" I asked, holding onto the leather armrest as the city lights blurred past us. "Wherever fate takes us," he replied, stepping on the gas. 20 minutes later, he pulled off the highway onto a high grassy bluff overlooking the entire valley. Below us, the lights of the city sparkled like scattered diamonds in the crisp midnight air. We climbed out and sat side by side on the long hood of the car, pulling our coats tightly around ourselves against the cold wind. "Why do you love driving so fast?" I asked, watching the wind rustle his hair. "It's dangerous." Julian looked out over the valley, his expression softening into something raw and genuine. "When I drive fast, I feel alive, I feel free." For 7 years in Switzerland, every hour of my day was managed, calculated, and controlled by my family's expectations. On the road, I'm just me. No legacy, no corporate responsibility, just me. He turned his head to look at me. "What about you, Stellar? Do you still want to become a nurse?" I blinked, surprised he remembered. "Of course I do." Julian smiled softly. "I remember when we were 8 years old, you stole my father's old stethoscope from his study. You ran around the garden listening to the heartbeat of the oak trees and the stray cats. You had this fierce, beautiful look in your eyes, like you were determined to heal the entire world." Suddenly, a loud boom echoed across the valley. The night sky burst into a brilliant explosion of crimson, gold, and vibrant violet fireworks. The grand city display had begun. I gasped softly, my eyes wide as the colors reflected off the dark canvas of the sky. I remember wanting to see the New Year's fireworks so badly when we were kids, I murmured softly. But Candace locked me in the potting shed behind the conservatory so I'd miss them. Julian's face darkened with genuine regret. I'm so sorry, Stellar. We were awful kids. I was too weak back then to stop her. It's in the past, I said, turning to look at him. The burst of brilliant light illuminated his face. He wasn't smiling anymore. He was staring directly at me, his gaze so intense and vulnerable that my heart stopped in my chest. Slowly, deliberately, he leaned in closer. I felt his breath warm against my icy cheek. I closed my eyes, my breath catching in my throat, waiting for the moment his lips would touch mine. Suddenly, my phone vibrated violently in my pocket, shattering the silence. I jolted backward, pulling out the phone. The screen flashed with my mother's contact name. It's my mom, I stammered, my heart racing. Mrs. Branson is looking for me. We have to go back right now. Can we make it back in 10 minutes, Julian asked. A dangerous spark returning to his eyes. Try me, I said. He winked, shifted the car into gear, and slammed his foot on the accelerator. We flew down the mountain road, tires gripping the sharp turns, my high-pitched scream echoing inside the cabin as he navigated the dark roads like a professional racer. We managed to sneak back through the estate's rear service entrance, but as we crossed the courtyard toward the pantry kitchen, the heavy oak doors swung open. Mrs. Branson stepped out onto the patio, holding a velvet coat over her arm, her sharp eyes scanning the shadowy yard. "Quick!" Julian whispered under his breath. Before I could react, Julian forcefully grabbed my shoulder and shoved me down onto my knees onto the damp stone path. "Why can't you find it? Are you completely blind?" He yelled loudly, his voice echoing across the courtyard. I instantly understood his game. I dropped to my hands and knees, frantically running my hands over the cold cobblestones, pretending to search desperately for something lost in the dark. "Stellar!" Mrs. Branson's icy voice cut through the air as she marched down the steps. "What is going on here?" Julian turned to his mother, his posture rigid and annoyed. "I dropped my silver cufflink near the rosebush, Mother, and I'm having this girl search for it. She's taking forever." Mrs. Branson narrowed her eyes, looking between Julian's arrogant stance and my damp knees on the stone. She sniffed dismissively. "Stop wasting your time with the staff, Julian. Guests are leaving. Get inside." Julian nodded casually and walked indoors without looking back. I stayed on the ground until Mrs. Branson turned her back, but as I stood up to brush the dirt from my apron, Mrs. Branson suddenly stopped in the doorway and turned around. Her eyes were cold, devoid of any warmth. "Do you really think I'm stupid, Stellar?" she whispered, her voice low and full of venom. I froze, holding my breath. I don't know what you mean, ma'am." "Drop the innocent act," she spat, taking 2 steps toward me. "You are a maid's daughter. You live here out of my charity. Do not ever forget your place in this house. If I catch you anywhere near my son again, I will throw you and your crippled mother out onto the street before sunrise. Am I understood?" "Yes, ma'am," I whispered, clutching my skirt. I spent the next 3 weeks doing everything in my power to avoid Julian. I ignored his glances in the hallway at school. I changed my cleaning shifts to early mornings, and I kept my eyes glued to the floor whenever he entered a room. I couldn't risk our shelter, not while my mother's leg was still healing. Then, winter hit its peak, and a bitter cold snap swept over the region. Julian caught a severe case of pneumonia. He was bedridden in the East Wing with a spiking fever. One late night, after making sure my mother was fast asleep in our cottage, I couldn't stop the deep anxiety gnawing at my chest. I crept into the main mansion using my service key and slipped quietly into his dark bedroom. The room was heavy with heat. Julian was lying tangled in the white sheets, his face flushed red, his skin slick with sweat. He looked so surprisingly fragile, stripped of his arrogant charm. I sat softly on the edge of the mattress, dipping a small cloth into a basin of cool water and placing it gently over his forehead. I stayed by his side for hours, changing the cool compresses, watching his chest rise and fall. As dawn began to break, I stood up to sneak out, but as I pulled my hand away, his hot fingers suddenly clamped tightly around my wrist. Julian pulled me down toward him. Before I could catch my balance, he reached up, placed his hand behind my neck and pulled my face down to his, pressing his hot, dry lips firmly against mine. The kiss was electric, desperate, and filled with a raw warmth that completely dismantled my defenses. For 5 breathless seconds, I lost myself, leaning into him, melting against his heat. Then reality slammed back into my mind. I pulled back sharply, standing up, my chest heaving. "That was a mistake," I breathed out, my hands trembling. "I shouldn't even be in this room." "It's not a mistake," Julian rasped out, his feverish green eyes holding mine with fierce intensity. "I really care about you, Stellar. I know you feel it too. Stop running from me." "We can't work out, Julian," I said, tears burning the back of my eyes. "Look at where we are." I'm the housekeeper's daughter. I don't fit into your world, and your mother will destroy us if she finds out. I don't care about my family's approval, he insisted, trying to sit up. Just tell me how you feel. Forget everyone else. Just tell me the truth. I couldn't say the words. I turned my back on him and fled into the dark hallway, my heart breaking with every step. A week later, Julian had recovered. To celebrate his recovery, Candace threw a lavish afternoon pool party at the estate's heated indoor pavilion. I was assigned to serve iced drinks and platters to her wealthy friends. As I walked out with a heavy brass tray, I saw Julian sitting on a lounge chair near the water. A stylish girl named Cassie, daughter of a massive real estate tycoon, was sitting absurdly close to him, laughing loudly and placing her hand on his forearm. Julian wasn't pulling away. He was smiling down at her. A hot wave of jealousy rushed through my veins, hot and blinding. I marched straight up to the loungers, slammed the heavy tray down onto the glass table with a deafening crash, and glared down at Julian. "Excuse me, sir," I said, my voice dripping with cold sarcasm. "I need you in the kitchen for a moment. There's a plumbing issue you need to inspect." Julian looked startled, then excused himself from Casey and followed me into the secluded pantry behind the pool house. "What is wrong with you?" he asked, amused. I picked up an empty metal tray from the counter and tapped it sharply against the top of his head. "Ouch! What was that for? Do you see stars yet?" I demanded, my hands on my hips. Julian smirked, stepping closer. "I only see a ridiculously jealous girl." "But wait, didn't you tell me last week that we'd never work out? So why do you care who sits next to me?" "You're a hypocrite, Julian," I snapped, my eyes blazing. "One night you're kissing me in your sickbed, telling me you care, and the next day you're flirting with some real estate heiress by the pool. You're just a player." Before I could finish my sentence, Julian stepped forward, gripped my waist, pressed my back gently against the pantry wall, and captured my mouth in a deep, fiery kiss. This time, I didn't pull away. I wrapped my arms around his neck, sinking into the kiss, throwing all caution to the wind. We began dating in absolute secret. For the next 2 months, our lives became a thrilling blur of hidden moments. We sneaked out late at night to drive along the coast, ate late-night diner food in obscure towns, and talked about our dreams until the sky turned pink. Being with Julian felt like stepping into a bright, vibrant world where class and money didn't exist. Then, one rainy evening while sitting in his car near the edge of the estate, Julian looked at me with an unusual, serious intensity. "I'm tired of hiding you, Stellar," he said softly, taking both of my hands in his. "I want to tell the world about us. I want to take you to normal dates without worrying about shadows." "It's dangerous, Julian," I whispered, my heart tightening. "Your mother will never accept this. If she finds out, she'll ruin my mother's life." "I know it won't be easy," he said. His green eyes locked onto mine with fierce determination. "But my father is coming back from his European business tour next week. I'm going to handle this properly. I will find a way to protect your mom and stand by you. I just need you to trust me." I looked into his honest eyes and felt a wave of warmth wash over my fears. "I trust you," I murmured. A week later, the estate hosted a grand formal gala to welcome Mr. Branson back to the country. It was the largest event of the year, packed with politicians, corporate titans, and international press. I worked the event in my formal uniform, my eyes searching for Julian throughout the evening. But he seemed completely unreachable. He was dressed in a sleek suit, constantly flanked by his father, Mrs. Branson, and an older, sharp-faced man named Liam Casey's older brother, and the heir to the massive corporate group the Bransons were trying to partner with. Liam was everywhere, hovering like a hawk, his sharp dark eyes constantly scanning the room, whispering in Mr. Branson's ear, and examining the estate's guest registers with an unsettling intensity. Julian didn't look my way once the entire night. My anxiety began to bubble up. At 9 o'clock, Mrs. Branson stepped onto the landing of the grand mahogany staircase, tapping her champagne glass with a silver spoon. The broad ballroom fell dead silent. "Good evening, everyone, Mrs. Branson announced, her voice echoing through the microphone. "Tonight is not just a welcome home for my husband, but a celebration of the future of our family enterprise. We are thrilled to announce a historic corporate merger with the Vance Group. And to solidify this incredible bond," she paused, smiling radiantly down at the crowd. "I am overjoyed to announce the formal engagement of my son, Julian Branson, to Miss Casey Vance." The room erupted into thunderous applause and cheers. I froze in the middle of the aisle, the world spinning out of focus. I stared in utter disbelief as Julian walked up the stairs, taking Casey's hand. He turned to the crowd, smiling calmly, looking completely pleased as he raised his glass in a toast. He had lied to me. Every word, every promise, every secret late-night kiss had been a cruel, elaborate game. Dazed, tears spilling hot and fast down my cheeks, I dropped my service tray onto a nearby table and stumbled toward the side exit. As I reached the hallway, Candace stepped directly into my path, a malicious, triumphant smirk spreading across her face. "I warned you, peasant," she sneered, leaning in close. "Did you really think my brother would choose a servant over a fortune? You're not his type. Not every Cinderella gets her prince." A volcanic surge of pure, unadulterated rage exploded inside my chest. All the months of humiliation, the silent suffering, the cruel classist abuse boiled over in a single second. I looked down at the brass tray of frosted tartlets sitting on the service cart beside me. I grabbed the tray with both hands and slammed it with maximum force directly into Candace's face. The loud, wet smack echoed down the hallway. Frosting, fruit, and crushed pastries exploded across her face, hair, and designer gown. Candace screeched like a wounded animal, stumbling backward onto the carpet. Everyone in the grand foyer gasped in absolute horror. I didn't wait to hear another sound. I spun around, sprinted out the service doors, and ran through the pouring rain back to our cottage. "Mom!" I slammed the cottage doors shut, my body shaking violently as tears streamed down my face. "We're leaving. Right now. Stellar, what happened?" My mother hurried out of the bedroom, still leaning on her cane. "I can't stay here another second," I sobbed, pulling our suitcases out from the closet. "They're going to throw us out anyway. We need to leave before they destroy us completely." Seeing my utter despair, my mother didn't ask any more questions. She took my hand, her eyes filled with tears, and simply said, "Okay, let's go." We packed everything we owned into 4 bags, called a local taxi, and fled the Branson estate in the middle of the night, leaving the world of ruthless billionaires behind us forever. As the taxi drove us through the dark rain toward the city, my mother reached over and squeezed my shaking hand tightly. "I should have taken us away years ago." "Stellar," she whispered softly, her eyes glistening with quiet regret. "I was too afraid to start over, so I let us suffer under their thumb. I was weak." "No, Mom," I said fiercely, wiping my eyes. "You worked your fingers to the bone to keep me fed and safe. You are the strongest person I know. We're going to survive this, together." We arrived in the city with limited savings, but we were determined. To secure a deposit on a small, clean 2-bedroom apartment near the medical district, I made a critical decision. A year prior, Mrs. Branson had tossed a limited edition leather bag into the luxury disposal bin simply because of a microscopic scuff on the inner strap. Knowing its true value, my mother had retained the original authenticity card from the estate room cleanup logs. I took the authenticated bag to a high-end consignment dealer downtown, where it resold for a small fortune enough to cover 4 months of rent in advance. My mother's leg fully recovered within 2 months, and she secured a peaceful job as a head housekeeper at a boutique luxury hotel place where she was treated with dignity and paid a fair wage. I threw myself into my work and my education. I worked 12-hour shifts as a waitress at a busy diner, studied late into the night, and applied for competitive nursing scholarships. Through sheer grit and relentless focus, I earned a full scholarship to the state's top university nursing program. 5 years passed in a blur of hard work, late nights, and quiet healing. At 23, I had transformed into a completely different person. I was no longer the defensive, timid maid's daughter hiding in the shadows of a mansion. I was a top-tier nursing intern at the city's largest trauma hospital, respected by doctors and beloved by patients for my sharp mind and composure under pressure. One afternoon, as I opened my locker in the staff room, a massive bouquet of red roses tumbled out onto the floor. I picked them up, staring at the attached card, and felt a familiar, annoying knot form in my stomach. The card was signed by Enrique, a wealthy, charming former patient I had cared for during his recovery from a sports injury 3 months ago. Enrique had been persistently asking me out ever since, showing up at the hospital with coffee, flowers, and grand gestures. While Enrique was undeniably handsome and kind, my heart remained locked behind an impenetrable wall. Ever since the night I left the Branson estate, I had sworn off love entirely. I didn't trust grand promises from wealthy men. That evening, after finishing a grueling 14-hour shift, I walked out of my apartment building into the cool autumn air, pulling my coat tight around my shoulders. I took 2 steps down the concrete path before bumping sharply into a tall man standing near the edge of the walkway. "Oh, I'm so sorry," I began automatically, looking up. The words froze in my throat. Standing right in front of me, bathed in the yellow light of the street lamp, was Julian. He looked older, broader, his sharp features refined by time. He was wearing a dark tailor-made coat, his striking green eyes locked onto mine with a desperate, intense hunger. "Stellar," he breathed out softly, his voice lower than I remembered. My blood ran cold, then boiled into immediate, blinding fury. "Are you kidding me?" I spat, stepping back, my voice shaking with disgust. "What are you doing here? How did you find my apartment?" "You look lovelier than ever," he said gently, taking a step toward me. "Stellar, please. I've been looking for you for years. Do not talk to me like that." I snapped, my eyes flashing with absolute hatred. You have zero shame, don't you? You show up after 5 years, acting like you can just smile your way back into my life? Go home to your wife, Julian. I didn't marry her, he said firmly, his eyes burning with intense conviction. I never married Casey. The day after you left, I canceled the arrangement. I cut all financial ties with my mother and my father. I left the family business entirely and built my own firm from scratch. I don't care, I yelled, my chest heaving with 5 years of suppressed pain. I don't care if you're a self-made man or a billionaire heir. You stood on those stairs, smiled in my face, and betrayed me in front of everyone. Get out of my sight before I call the police. Stellar, just give me 10 minutes, get away from me! I screamed, shoving past him into the night, refusing to look back as he called my name into the empty street. Over the next 3 days, my phone buzzed incessantly with unknown caller IDs. Julian was texting me constantly, pleading for just one chance to explain what had happened 5 years ago. I blocked every number, refusing to let him reopen the wounds I had spent half a decade stitching together. On Friday morning, I was on duty in the emergency department when the high-priority alarm began blaring through the trauma bay. All available trauma staff to Bay 2. Paramedics incoming with a critical motor vehicle collision. I grabbed my shears and rushed into the bay as the automatic doors swung open. 4 paramedics wheeled in a bloody, unconscious patient on a stretcher, yelling out vital signs over the chaos. Male, 27 years old, T-bone collision on the highway. Vehicle's brake lines appear to have failed completely, blood pressure dropping rapidly. I stepped forward to hook up the IV monitors, glancing down at the patient's intake chart. The name at the top of the sheet made my heart plunge into a dark, bottomless abyss. Julian Branson. My breath trapped in my throat. My hands began to shake violently as I looked down at his blood-stained face, his pale skin marred by cuts and bruises. Stellar, grab the saline line, the lead physician shouted, pushing past me. I forced my hands to stabilize, my professional instincts taking over. For 40 agonizing minutes, we fought to stabilize his internal bleeding, stitching deep lacerations and monitoring his erratic heart rate. By the time he was moved into a private recovery room in the intensive care unit, I was completely drained, my scrubs stained with sweat and rain. Once the medical team cleared the room, I stepped inside and pulled a chair up to his bed. Tears spilled quietly down my cheeks as I looked at his frail form, the long-dormant love I had tried so hard to bury surging back with terrifying force. Slowly, his eyelashes fluttered. His green eyes, hazy with medication, shifted around the room before landing on my face. Stellar, he croaked out, his voice a dry whisper. Don't talk, I sobbed, reaching down to gently hold his bruised hand. Just lie still. You were in a terrible crash. No, I have to talk, he murmured, squeezing my fingers with surprising strength. Before I pass out again. You have to know the truth, Julian. Please listen to me, Stellar, he urged, his vitals spiking slightly on the heart monitor. 5 years ago, the night of the gala, my mother and Liam Vance didn't just plan a merger. Liam had spent months secretly altering the estate's asset books, creating false records to make it look like your mother had stolen hundreds of thousands of dollars in heirloom jewelry over her 10 years of service. My jaw dropped. What? Liam brought the doctored ledgers to my mother that afternoon. Julian rasped, his eyes burning with anger. They told me that if I didn't publicly announce the engagement to Casey to secure the corporate merger, they would immediately file criminal charges against your mother. They were going to put your crippled mom in a maximum security prison for grand larceny. I sat there, frozen, the horror of his words washing over me like a tidal wave. I was 19 years old, Stellar, Julian whispered, tears glistening in the corners of his eyes. I was weak, terrified, and cornered. I knew my mother was ruthless enough to follow through. So I played along for one night, just to buy time so I could figure out how to clear your mother's name. But when I came to the cottage the next morning, you were already gone. Why didn't you tell me? I sobbed, clutching his hand to my cheek. Because I knew you'd fight them, and they would have crushed you, he said softly. So I spent the last 5 years building my own independent firm, gathering evidence against Liam Vance. I bought out their debt, tracked down their false records, and today, I was on my way to the district attorney's office with the final evidence files when my car's brakes completely failed. My blood ran cold. The crash, it wasn't an accident. The heavy mahogany door to the recovery room suddenly swung open. I turned around, expecting a doctor. Instead, Tori stepped into the room. She was wearing an elegant business suit, carrying a heavy leather briefcase. Tori? I gasped, wiping my eyes. She gave me a tight professional nod. Hello, Stellar. Long time no see. She walked straight to Julian's bedside, opening the briefcase and pulling out a thick manila folder alongside an encrypted flash drive. I brought the missing security logs from the estate's old server, Julian, Tori said, her voice smooth and confident. The logs clearly show Liam Vance entering the vault with the master key on the exact dates he claimed Stellar's mother was stealing. Furthermore, my private investigator caught Liam's mechanic on hidden camera tampering with your car's brake lines in the hospital parking garage 2 hours ago. I stared at Tori in utter shock. You helped him? Tori looked at me, a genuine, warm smile finally breaking through her composed expression. I told you 5 years ago in the schoolyard that I hate bullies who lack skill. Candace and her mother were toxic, but Liam Vance is a criminal. Julian hired me as his chief legal consultant 3 years ago to help bring Liam down. We've been waiting for the right moment to strike. Before I could process the sheer magnitude of what she was saying, 2 uniformed police officers and a lead detective pushed past the curtain, followed closely by a frantic, pale-faced Liam Vance, who was trying to argue with them. "What is the meaning of this?" Liam shouted, his voice echoing in the hall. "You can't enter a private ICU room," Liam Vance, the lead detective declared, pulling out a set of steel handcuffs. "You are under arrest for corporate fraud, grand extortion, state tax evasion, and attempted murder in connection with the vehicular sabotage of Julian Branson." "No, this is a setup!" Liam screamed as the officers grabbed his arms, snapping the handcuffs tightly around his wrists. Julian stared coldly at Liam from his hospital bed. "The evidence on that drive goes back 6 years, Liam. Your entire family legacy is over." As the police dragged a screaming, ruined Liam down the hallway, the full weight of the truth finally settled over me. The lies, the sacrifice, the years of silent suffering, it was all over. Liam faced decades in prison, Mrs. Branson's corporate empire collapsed under the public exposure of her fraud, and Candace's social standing was permanently obliterated. Tori smiled softly at us, picked up her briefcase, and walked toward the door. "I'll leave you two to handle the rest of your recovery," she said with a wink, sliding the door shut behind her. The room fell quiet again. I turned back to Julian, tears flowing freely down my cheeks. "You absolute idiot," I choked out, leaning over his bed. "You suffered through all of that by yourself just to protect my mother and me?" "I'd do it 1,000 times over," Julian whispered, reaching up with his good hand to cup my cheek, his thumb softly wiping away my tears. "Everything I've built over the last 5 years means nothing if I don't have you in my life, Stellar." I let out a watery laugh, leaning down until my forehead rested against his. "You wanted my attention so badly that you had your brakes cut? Only if it means you'll agree to go on a proper date with me," he murmured, his green eyes shining with warmth. "I'll think about it after you get discharged," I whispered, smiling through my tears. "So you better heal fast." I bent down and pressed my lips gently to his. His heart monitor spiked with a frantic, joyful rhythm, echoing through the small room, filling the quiet space with the sweet, undeniable proof that we had finally won our freedom. 6 months later, the afternoon light streamed through the floor-to-ceiling glass windows of the city's premier art gallery. The hall was filled with breathtaking, translucent glass sculptures, casting vibrant, rainbow-colored light across the polished marble floors. I stood in front of a massive, intricate piece featuring 2 sweeping glass wings rising from a bed of rough, dark stone. I was wearing an elegant emerald dress, my arm wrapped tightly around Julian's. He was fully heeled, looking dashing in a dark gray suit, his gaze fixed on me rather than the art. "What are you looking at?" I asked, smiling up at him. "The most beautiful thing in the room," he said softly, leaning down to kiss my temple. My mother walked over, dressed in a lovely pastel gown, chatting happily with Tori about an upcoming charity gala our new foundation was hosting for low-income medical students. Looking at them, then back at the vibrant glass wings reflecting the clear sky above, I knew that the darkness of our past had finally shattered into light. We were no longer bound by someone else's rules, legacy, or cruelty. We were finally truly free.